ready for our next panel. It's back to back. It's all action here at the KBIS Next Stage, let me tell you. I'm Leanne Wood. I'm president of Flying Camel PR, your host on the KBIS Next Stage. So, as we all know, so much has changed in this crazy world that we are living in. And in the design and architecture community, there have been many shifts. This topic is literally another set of challenges that requires new thinking. Get ready to explore this multi-generational design topic with an amazing set of panelists. And moderator Avinash Rajagopal wasn't originally scheduled to moderate this panel, but he offered to fill in, so we are so incredibly grateful for him. And he ran a panel this morning on responsible design, and I know this is going to be another great topic for him. Avi is the editor-in-chief of Metropolis, the award-winning architecture and design publication. He is a frequent speaker and moderator at events, like today, related to interior design, architecture, and urbanism. And he is an advocate for sustainable architecture and design. Avi, welcome to the stage, and I'll let you introduce the rest of the panel.
Come on, folks. I'll introduce you when you're here. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so fantastic to see everybody here. Is everybody having a good show? Awesome, awesome. I'm going to introduce the panelists to you, but before I do that, I'd love to introduce you to the panelists. So can we have a show of hands here? How many folks here are interior designers? OK, great. How many folks are in building, construction, developing? On the building side. Oh, awesome. OK. Product manufacturing, and then marketing and all of that stuff. OK. Dealers, contractors. OK. All right. So we know who's in the audience. That's great. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a fantastic panel today to talk about multi-generational design. I mean, people of all generations living together, this is not new. It's certainly not new for many families in the US. But the pandemic, I think, has accelerated certain trends, right? So over the past couple of years, we've seen some kids move back with their parents for financial reasons. We've seen parents move in with their kids or developing homes together where they can all live together for safety reasons, for a whole variety of familial reasons. We've also seen a shrink in generational wealth transfer. So unfortunately, we haven't seen as much wealth transfer from baby boomers to millennials, and millennials now should be in their prime home building or home buying age, and we know how that's going. I'm a millennial, so I can say that. And the other thing is that we're also seeing movements for accessory units, granny units, ADUs, as they're called in some parts of the country. And that's another form of multi-generational living, right? So we've seen all these trends accelerate, and they bring some really interesting design challenges, but I think it's going to be a reality, this typology, for anybody who's in the residential design sector, and I assume a lot of you are. So we have a great group of panelists to discuss this topic with us today. We have with us Jonas Karnmark, who is the president of Karnemark, joining us from DC today.
That's right.
Thanks so much, Jonas, for joining us. We also have Ann Rue, who is the owner and principal designer at Ann Rue Interiors, who's from right here in Florida. Thanks, Ann, for joining us. And Kendall Ansell, who's a principal at Kendall Ansell Interiors, joining us all the way from Vancouver, Canada. Kendall, thanks so much for joining us. So let's start off with, I'd love for each of you to give us a small introduction to the kind of work you do. I know you have some projects you'd like to show us. So give us a taste of what multi-generational design feels like today. And I'm going to have you kick us off, Jonas.
Well, thank you. So I have a design build firm where we do architecture and construction in DC, and we've been doing that 35 years next week. And then I have 2 showrooms that are kitchen and bath for European product. And there I get to work with other interior designers, architects, and it's really fun to learn what other people do. But in our business, we've always looked at whole house renovation in terms of creating a home that lasts generationally. And when I was doing this earlier, the boomers, which I'm one, were sort of like they just wanted to have what they wanted to have. They didn't really care about, it's feet first, that's when I'm leaving. And what I've really seen now is millennials are coming to us and asking for a forever home. They're saying, I want to have grab bars, I want an elevator, I at least want space for one. And it's such a shift from what we're doing, what we used to do. But I think of it more as, grandkids to grandparents, everybody should be able to use the home. And I think that's somewhat of a European concept in the sense that people were investing in a house that is going to be longer than them. And I've seen that happen with a pandemic. People care about quality and things like that.
Absolutely.
You want me to show?
Yeah, the
now?
green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So these are a couple of shots. This was actually a client that we did their kitchen back in the 80s, and then he developed mobility issues, so we did a accessible bathroom, and that's the shower in the accessible bathroom. And for them, it was creating a first floor living space for him. He had arm strength and really loved a tub, and so we created a tub where he could slide in. But most people feel that it wasn't sort of a ADA style bathroom. It was a lot of fun, and we combined two bathrooms where we then took a little powder room and used actually the vanity top that I put back in the 80s back into the little powder room that we created. This is another one where another retiring gentleman wanted a really nice luxury sort of spa bathroom. That's the pictures on the left and the middle. And he had his mother move in, and we did a very accessible bathroom for her. But his was accessible shower. We had blocking in the walls for future grab bars and things like good lighting, contrast, that type of thing, which is really important. This was another one where the parents who actually went down to Florida and then wanted to be with their kids some time of the year, but they didn't want to disturb the teenagers and things like that, so we put a little elevator in the foyer, and because it was this nice Tudor home, we used a little circular tube so that we didn't have to frame out some big box. And they could get in there, nip up with their little dog up to what we called the Peninsula Suite upstairs, and so they had a really nice kitchenette, bathroom, and things like that, so it was like a little attic renovation. That's the little place where they live. And then because the younger kids were doing all this work with for their parents, they wanted to upgrade their master bath. So that's the one on the right where we updated that. And that's been a really popular shot, even though it's such a small bathroom. But it was just sort of, for them, they felt really good about it. And they knew, I think, that at some point they were going to move upstairs themselves.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
That's the thing about aging, right? I mean, it happens to all of us.
It does.
And that's I think the design lesson that's sinking in is, if you want durable spaces, if you want that investment over the years, as you were saying, you need to be able to, the spaces that your parents might use today are the things you might be using right down the line. The other interesting thing, I think, just to emphasize from the project you showed us, Jonas, is this integration of like different design aesthetics, sensibilities, with a real kind of attention to what each generation needs. And I'm sure, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more in our discussion, but when you were talking about high contrast and light, right? So it goes beyond material choices. It's really thinking about the big picture when you're designing for people of different ages. So beautiful projects.
One thing that I find is that if you can do something where design is enduring and lasts a long time, it's a much more sustainable approach to doing a home because it will last over generations.
Right, and sustainable in many senses of the word. So we're going to dig into that. Kendall, let's have you talk about your work.
Sure. So my name is Kendall Ansel, and I own two businesses. I have a 12-year-old interior design business and a 3-year-old construction company where we focus on growing and working with female trades, and based in Vancouver. But I have done work also in Baltimore and Montreal, so been a few different places. We mainly focus on renovations, and I think the majority of our clients, are boomers that are looking to help their kids get into the housing market and provide either a larger home for them or an apartment that they can use and their kids can use. We also have a lot of younger clientele that are just starting out in their first place, and they don't really know how to navigate that process of making the space feel like theirs when they're buying into, bigger developments with very cookie cutter design. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah.
These photos are out of order, but we will. Do I press the button?
Yes. Green.
Oh.
It's not going up there.
Oh. So they're coming up here. Okay.
Okay.
They're up there, so that's fine.
Yes. So we can ignore the one on the left because that's definitely not the house. That's a before photo of something else. But the one on the right, it was Grandma's house. She had lived there 30, 35 years, and it was quite dated. So the grandson actually moved in and now has a baby, and they are living in this grandma's old apartment. This is the kitchen. So a lot of times we're talking to people about budgets and what they can do to upgrade the home, but not necessarily changing everything. We don't want to be removing drywall everywhere. We want to stretch the budget as best we can to give them the most that we can. So for example, in this one, you can see that we still have some 6-panel doors in the background. We didn't change the doors. They were in great shape, but we updated the kitchen, removed a wall, and did a few other upgrades to the apartment. Oh, went too fast. So this is actually, it was a new apartment, new build, and it had no character and no personality. The client actually thought the windows were coming in black and they came in white. So we swapped the dining room and living room areas. We added the black to the windows. We basically overhauled the space to make it more personal for them because it just felt just very cavernous and had no personality, not much going on. These people also downsized from a very large home to an apartment, and that's something that is a very emotional process, and it's something that we help our clients navigate through. So as much storage as we can cram into these places, we do attempt to. So the entire fireplace there actually opens up to full storage. There's another shot in a different direction. Again, they have pieces like the piano that they want to bring to the apartment from the large home, and we have to attempt to make it work in a smaller space. So this lady, I think she's 81 now. Her whole life has dreamed about having a very contemporary kitchen. I'm hoping we have a sneak of a before photo in here. But her son lives in the basement, and she lives on the main level, and oh, we've lost it. Oh, that's you. That's not me. So we completely gutted her apartment and created more of a contemporary space for her dream space. She intends to live out her years there. Her son, like I said, lives in the basement and looks after her from there. So it's quite a nice place. I think it's your turn.
I think, Kendall, one of the thing you mentioned about being responsible with the budget, because a lot of folks who are making decisions like this to live with their parents or with their kids are often doing that also to make a financially responsible decision, whether it is, with a view to their own sort of retirement savings or their kind of future planning, or it is to do with their kids' finances, right? And so I think that financial angle is really interesting too, is, there's design constraints, and those constraints come from, you have to make creative decisions with a budget.
You do, and they want to feel that the money has really been used as best as possible and not focused on one area. That, at least for our clientele, we're always trying to make the most of what we have. So there's a lot of clever ways to do that.
Right, absolutely. And you want to take us through some of your work?
Sure. My name is Ann Rue, and I'm an interior designer here in Florida. I've been in business for 21 years. We specialize in residential, multifamily, and we do a good amount of senior housing, independent, assisted, and memory care facilities. I think I just pushed this right here.
The green, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so in Florida, Multi-generational has been around for a very long time. The Hispanic community, the Latino community, they're all coming and they need more space because they all live together, or they don't ship grandma off to the nursing home or to the villages. They live with them. So, but now it's happening all over, especially with COVID. People are coming to live together. So these projects that I'm going to share with you are new construction build, and it's basically taking a home that you might have a 2-car garage over here and a 1-car garage over here. We convert that 1-car garage into a complete living space for grandma or the nanny or the college student that comes back. So again, it looks like a normal size house. We're not reinventing the wheel here, but they've got their own entry. They have their own living space, which you can see right here. Oh, you guys can't see that. How do I get there? Oh,
Yeah, you're good. Oh,
We can see it here.
oh, they can see
No
it.
worries.
Perfect. Okay. So anyway, this is a living space where the kitchenette area is somewhat private from the living space, and then beyond that is the bedroom, which I think is right here. So again, it's kind of like an apartment style living, but they have a full kitchenette. They have their own entry, and it really makes a space specifically for them. This next space that I'm going to share with you is more of an open concept. Exact same type of layout for the home, where one side of the house, which would be like a single car garage, is converted into a living space. But this is a much more open plan. You can see the living room and the kitchenette area are more open. It was able to give us a larger space for the kitchenette, and then beyond that is the bathroom and then the bedroom. So there you go.
That's fantastic, right? So that's another completely different kind of strategy, is taking over spaces that are underused or that can be, kind of made over to accommodate new inhabitants in the family. But what's lovely about it is that you've created practically autonomous spaces, right?
Yes.
Because I think that's another thing. That's maybe a difference. Again, I can say this, I'm South Asian, we, just like, Latino folks, we're used to the idea of, kids living with their parents and so on. But I think this idea of autonomy, right? The parents need to have their own space. The kids need to have their own space. That's new. And I think what you're doing is creating that kind of bridge with this new lifestyle, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, they want to have their own entrance, but they also want to be able to enjoy the rest of the house. So then it's very easy for them to be able to go right into where the family is and where the bigger kitchen is in the family room. So it's important.
Right. So you can have the best of both worlds. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. So one thread I want to pull out from all of your projects, and we're going to open up to questions from all of you in a little bit. So if you have any thoughts about multi-generational design, designing for people of different ages, how to deal with budgets or design sensibilities or anything like that on that, please start to think about it. I don't need questions. They can be half-formed thoughts. You have a response to something you saw, you loved a project you just saw, tell us about it. We want to pull you into this conversation. But folks, tell me, how do you bridge design sensibilities, right? Because often people have very different preferences about how they'd like to live, and they're not always expected. I love the fact that you had a client in their 80s who've always wanted a contemporary kitchen, right? And often you find younger folks who want transitional style or, really classic or farmhouse. I think our assumptions about aesthetics are often wrong, and that maybe was where some of the previous generation of senior living spaces maybe failed, is that they assumed that older people had conservative tastes.
They don't.
So let's talk about design sensibilities across generations. What have you learned? How do you bridge it? How do you have that conversation with your clients?
For me, again, more of that modern or contemporary or transitional look is where the younger generation and the older generation is moving. Like you just said, in senior housing, no more are we doing the traditional look. It's just not there. Also, that more contemporary or transitional look, it's just a cleaner feel. It's got more longevity, and it's got more of a timeless feel.
Yeah. Right.
I would say that mom and dad have now become part of the conversation of what the kids want to do if they're all living together. So instead of having husband and wife opinion, now we have husband, wife, grandma, mom. Like it's become, we have a bigger discussion of how this house is actually going to work and function. So we have a lot more opinions. It takes a lot more patience, but
Therapy.
and a lot more therapy. But yeah, it's mom will always have an opinion, but it's really about figuring out individually what they want and trying to make the ties together with, colors and materials and look, so that there isn't this break in. It's clearly grandma's apartment, it's clearly mom and dad's, and then it's the kids. The house does have to have some continuity to it.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a real rise in contemporary in our area. I'm in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and when I started it was a lot of moldings and very traditional, but I think with the advent of the internet and shows like Mad Men and all that, the whole mid-century thing has grown, and that's a very easy palette to bring across both generations because it's familiar to older people and younger kids like it. Sometimes we break the argument with what's sympathetic to the home already so that it feels and flows nicely. And I think flow is probably the first thing that you want to focus on amongst all the spaces and how it works within the house. And then you can dress it up. And I always think dressing it up with art is one of the best ways to dress up a house. And that lends a personality for both the adults and the kids, or, well, they're all adults, but all the generational people in there.
Yeah, and we certainly saw that with that elevator shaft that you put into the Tudor home. I mean, really thinking about how the space flows, what's going to block the flow of the space. I mean, it was absolutely clear in there, Jonas.
It's beautiful.
Well, we didn't want a box in the foyer. We just wanted this nice little tube.
That's very cool.
I want to continue on this theme that Jonas has opened up. What are some of the things that you have to think about when you're designing a multi-generational space? You brought up flow. We've talked about color before. We talked about light before. What are some of the things that maybe the kids haven't really thought about because they don't really think about, well, is there color contrast so, somebody who's aging is able to see things clearly? Or maybe the older folks haven't really thought about, well, if the kids want to entertain, what would they want their friends to see? So what are some of the things across generations that you often have to have those difficult, maybe conversations with your clients about?
Well, I think for us, I've really been impressed with how much the younger generations are thinking about those things. And I think part of that is just the education that they've been getting from all the different venues and thinking about things like, can the house sustain grab bars later? Or is there a barrier-free shower? Pretty much any shower we do now, we just do that because it's good building. And I think that sort of happened with sustainability and green building. There was that big blip in eco-chic in 2008 where everybody wanted to go green, but now it's just people are expecting a better performing house. And I think if we keep going with this, people will expect a better generational house.
Yeah, for sure. I'll add on to grab bars, to bidet seats, to smart technology, and then also material choices like a vinyl flooring versus maybe a traditional hardwood, just so that we get more longevity for potentially walker or a wheelchair, and talking about, the mobility issues that could come in the future, obviously being very sensitive to when we bring up a topic like that. But when I describe the longevity of products, people are automatically bought in because they want to see their homes last longer and be in better shape longer.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to form and function. You really have to understand how they want to live in their home, and we need to have open spaces for everyone to gather. But what's more important is everyone has their own space and their smaller spaces. And these don't have to be huge spaces. I mean, just a little nook.
A cubby, yeah.
Yeah. It makes such a huge difference. So you got to understand how they're going to function and how they can get away from everyone when they don't want to be with them, and then also gather when they do.
Yeah.
I love that, this designing for multi-generational living is such an amazing creative challenge because it really forces you to think about balance, right? To think about the relationships between spaces in a way that maybe you won't have to think about when you're just dealing with husband and wife and two different personalities. It's really interesting. I think it's such a more complex form of design, but ultimately so much more satisfying. You brought up the green building movement, and we talked earlier about how designing multi-generational homes is also a way of future-proofing. Like, you want the home to last for a long time, you want it to be a good space for the people who are in it. Can we talk about how much sustainability, but also health, wellness, those kinds of concepts are starting to play into your work? Before you answer that, quick reminder, we're going to come to you for any of your thoughts and comments in just a minute here, but I'm going to let the panelists respond to that.
Well, I can start with that, and it's the younger generation that's really conscious of this, I believe. And I spoke about it yesterday. There are a lot of man-made countertops and surfaces that function for specific reasons, but I think a lot of people are looking more to the natural stone, the marbles, the granite, the quartzite, because of the fact that 10 years from now, 12 years from now, when we're ripping that cabinet out, where does it go? Does it get crushed up, and is it used as pavement? Is it used as landscaping? The man-made products, do they just sit in a landfill? How do you do that? Where do they go? So people are thinking about that. Those natural stones might cost more, but it's worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. Let's wait till they announce. Okay. As I said it, the announcement ended.
Unfortunately, I think sometimes sustainability and budget have a dance together that they have to do, for us anyways. And I'm definitely just back to more of the warranty and the longevity of what's initially being put in is what we can offer, I would say, to someone that's on a budget. And then, we're constantly pulling things out that are basically brand new that we'll bring to a store to resell, or it can go on Facebook Marketplace to be sold, and really trying to make that effort. I think that myself owning a construction company, we make that effort every day, and the clients enjoy seeing the care being put into what is being put into the landfill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think for us, the sustainability thing has been about better building and energy. Mm-hmm. And there's so much low-hanging fruit that you can, teach your clients about in terms of how to make the house perform better. And it isn't just about recycled glass countertops. That's sort of, that's cool. But there's so much else that one can do if you want to really think about sustainability that way. I saw this morning a really cool thing, which was a rain shower that recycled the water so you could have a really powerful shower for a long time. And it reminded me of taking a bath. You're in the bathtub and you're not wasting water. Some of the other things is if you're demolishing something, we've been doing this for years, where there's a local community place called Community Forklift, and they will pick up everything that's building materials, flooring, appliances, cabinets, toilets, faucets, and you think, oh, this is no good, no one's going to want this, but they take it all and it goes into a lower income reuse stream, and that way the clients get a kickback from taxes, and then we're not filling up the landfill. And that's just standard on demo drawings when we pull stuff out.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I'll just emphasize that a minute, because that's near and dear to my heart too. If you're working on renovation projects, as you said, you want to look for a regional salvage partner or a nonprofit who will take demolition waste or building material waste. I believe we had a panelist this morning from Refined Kitchens, which works out of San Diego, California, and he was saying that building materials, often a nonprofit will be able to give your client a tax break of up to $5,000. And if you actually take the extra step of appraising it, it can be an even bigger tax break than that. So there's value in materials that are being thrown away, and especially on renovation projects or projects where an older generation client is now redoing their space up again to bring their kids in, or kids are adding to their space to bring their parents in. There's going to be churn of materials, and you want to be responsible with the use of those materials. So that's definitely a big factor here. Before we open up to questions from the audience, just one quick thing. So what to you feels like a successful outcome for multi-generational design? when you're thinking about a space where multiple generations are going to live together, what is it that you're like, if I get to that point, if I hit that, I'm happy? So I'm just going to get something a little more personal from all of you, and then we'll open up for questions.
So I think it's in the future, because if that home turns over to another family and they can use it for that same purpose, that's when it's really fun. And we've been doing this for a while, where we've seen homes turn over and then we go back and maybe remodel the home for a new client. But when that flow is right, then it's just so sellable. It's wonderful that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or future generations can be welcomed into that home, and it can be converted, and they move through the home organically. I think that's probably the key to success of that.
Absolutely.
It's when I get a thank you letter or an invite to come over and have a glass of wine, then I know I've done a good job.
Well, you just managed expectations somehow.
Absolutely. We're ready for any thoughts, comments, questions, responses from all of you. All I will say is, if you're going to say something, we do have a mic for you, so that everybody can hear. Any questions or thoughts, comments?
You have to offer a prize for the first one.
Sorry?
You offer a prize for the first question.
Oh, well,
Considering it.
yeah, I'm wondering what prize. Well,
You don't really have to give one.
I know. Oh, I just offer one.
Yeah.
I do have digital editions of Metropolis if anybody wants one. First question, I'm serious.
Any projects that you guys are working on that are similar to this, where it's co-generational?
Any designers out there doing it?
Yeah?
Go ahead.
Very nice.
Yeah, you are.
Where are you located? I'm doing a project there right now. Good for you.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm going to have a mic come to you. Sorry.
I'll touch it if you don't mind.
You mentioned in the beginning something about accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and I've heard that come up at this show more than once. And I wonder if the panelists have come up against zoning regulations and problems if you've been associated with creating an unconventional design for a house that has multiple living spaces, multiple kitchens on one single family lot.
Uh-huh. And that sounds like a question for you.
Well, I was going to let the construction people do that, but yes, there is, especially if you're trying to put two kitchens. And we're doing it right now at the beach, where she wants almost like a full kitchen below, and then a full kitchen up top, plus a working pantry, and they're saying no, too much. So, again,
Sometimes that's if you have two cooktops, like in a basement, they won't let that other cooktop go. And then there's regional things. There's a county near us called Arlington, where they have been promoting ADUs. They also promote sustainability. We won a green award for one project there. And it's really interesting that they'll give you a tax break if you create an ADU, so that you can have more dense population within that area. So check out, it's really about the codes and who's pushing that.
Yeah. California is doing something similar in many counties, where they're trying to incentivize ADUs.
Yeah.
Because they want to build density.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? I think one of the interesting things about co-generational living is that it also, I think, takes some of the pressure off of that huge wave we saw of senior living spaces coming online in cities everywhere. So I just wonder if, are there design cues or lessons that you've learned from co-generational living that you think are also applicable to senior living? We talked about aesthetics for a second, but just what are the things you've learned about aging in place through your process?
Ease of use of the space. Is it a walker? Is it a wheelchair? Is it grab bars? Just knowing what needs could be met in that space. And then obviously with kitchens, it's about how to move around and not hurt yourself in that space.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely ease of use is the biggest. the biggest thing I've learned.
And getting rid of the hallways. I mean, you need to have dividers, but you have to have open spaces. The hallways are just so hard to navigate, especially if you have a wheelchair and things like that. And then the zero entry showers.
Yeah.
I don't know why we do it any differently.
And there's lots of things like that, but I think it comes back to better building. I mean, having an outlet behind a toilet, they don't have to have a smart toilet now, but you can have it later. Having wider doorways that are easily accessible, having light switches that have a little light on them so you can see them. And think about night lighting in terms of guiding yourself, because as you get older, you might get up a little more often.
There's some new products actually that came out at CES for moving doors that automatically open. There's a new hospital building in Vancouver that actually the person waves at the door and it opens. So there's a lot new tech that can actually help with all these aging in place issues, such as doors and, flow.
Right. Yeah. I think those elements of transitional design, again, as a reminder, they're honestly, a grab bar is great for everybody in a bathroom.
It's like a seatbelt. You
It's
never
like
know
a
when you.
seatbelt. Yeah, you never know. I mean, you never know when you're gonna when you might slip, and you might need it. And there's lots of things like that. Lighting at night or
the
hallways.
manufacturers have really stepped up the game because it does not look like handicapped. Or
They're not
anything.
ugly anymore.
Yeah, it's really wonderful how they've really helped out with that.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I wanted to round out here is, for a long time, we looked at ADA regulations as like just that, regulations, like a baseline that we need to meet. But I think hearing you talk, especially your first project, Jonas, where there was somebody with limited mobility. We're also talking about people with different sensory needs, people who see things differently, who hear differently. Certainly, I think co-generational design also shows us the way forward in terms of thinking about ADA not as a baseline, but as a creative opportunity. So I'm wondering if you can just talk about that for a second, and then we'll close out today.
Oh.
Well, one thing, if you want to learn more about it, there's the Living in Place Institute that has a certification called CLIP, Certified Living in Place Specialist. And that is really helpful in terms of learning tips and tricks on how to get your client nice things that will be protective of them, but in a way that's more ageless. It's much more about what if you sprained your ankle one day? You still have the same issues as when you have a walker.
Well, I think in one of your pictures, you designed it beautifully there. I mean, the space didn't look like it was ADA. It looked beautiful. So, I mean, again, our home is the most expensive thing we're ever going to purchase. Let's make it look good while we do it. Let's make it function, and let's make it look beautiful.
Yeah. I would say one of the most obvious things is countertop heights and wall-mounted toilets. Those are the easiest ways to customize a space that is future-proof for yourself and for your needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much. I love that we've talked about some of those big trends, but also touched upon some really great design tips. Little details that can make such a big difference. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all of you for being part of this discussion. We really appreciate it. We got a resource mention here, LIPS, the Living in Place, certification. So please check that out. And of course, if you want to connect with any of the panelists after we step off the stage, please feel free to do so. I hope all of you have a great show and a great afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Great job.